In today's video, we're going to learn how to make our own custom components. To get started, in your app folder, you want to make a new folder. So you'll see here we have all the different folders in our app, and this one here gives us a new file. This icon gives us a new folder, and we're going to make a new folder called Components. This is good for organization of your React Native apps in general, and we'll follow this model of best practice. So from here, we're going to make a new file, and we will call this MyButton.tsx. And remember that tsx is the file extension for a TypeScript file. Now, inside here, we are going to use the shortcut RNFES. And what RNFES does is this is going to be our React Native, we can see right here, functional export component. And that will give us our starting code for creating a MyButton component. And it will export it, have a style sheet, and all that fun stuff. Now, if I were to go ahead and I were to, inside my index file, I were to make a MyButton, I can see it right away. So underneath my text, if I were to say I wanted to add a MyButton, we can see here that it's going to add the import from my components folder. And I can just use the slash angled bracket. This is that self-closing syntax. And if I hit save, I can now see that this has appeared. And that was from the MyButton component. And what we're going to do now is I'm just going to keep this screen up, and I'm going to click this to collapse that side panel. And then as we type in here, we can see it changing over here. Now, for starters, we're going to use something called a touchable highlight. Now, we learned the other day about the basic default button component. And if I just use a basic button here, like if I were to say button, and I were to import that, we know that a button needs a title. Oh my goodness, I cannot type. And it needs an on press. So on press, I'm just going to do a basic arrow function for an alert and just say hi. And then I need to add that to my imports. Now, if I were to go ahead and I were to save this, I'm going to see that basic button right here. And when I click on it, I see my alert. And that's great and all, but it's kind of ugly. It doesn't do anything. And the button does not support a style attribute, which is a big drawback to it. So if you were just trying to get a quick button on the screen to be able to work with your code, it does the job. But if you want to make it look good, it's not going to do the job for you. So we're going to actually go ahead and we're going to delete that. And instead of using a basic view, I'm going to use a touchable highlight. And what a touchable highlight does, let me close this, is it makes it so that, and if you hover over this, we can read our documentation, and we can see here this is a wrapper, meaning that it wraps around, and it allows your things to respond to touches. So when you press on it, in this case, since we're using touchable highlight, we're going to see the opacity change to the underlay color. Now, the default underlay color is black. So right now, if I were to look at this, I don't see anything happening, and that's because I don't have an on press. So let me add an on press. And again, I'm just going to use that default alert. And now when I save this, and whoops, what did I just do? Oh, there we go. Now we can see that it's now the touchable highlight, and when I click on it, it shows that black color, which is not pretty. So there's a couple things that we can do here. For starters, we can add a different underlay color. And I'm going to change this underlay color to be yellow, because why not? And now when I click on it, it's yellow and not quite so hideous. I can also go ahead and I can apply styles so that I can make this view look like a button, even though it's not using that boring button component. So I am going to say style equals styles dot, and then I'm going to add some button styles here. And then I'm also going to add some text styles. So I'm going to say style equals styles dot text. And you'll notice that right now these are red, they're yelling at me, and that's because I haven't created these style objects yet. But we're going to come down here and do that right now. So I'm going to say button and text. Now, in terms of why do I create them in this way? Well, I like to be able to make it in a way that as I'm coding and I save, I can instantly see those changes happen. So for my button, let's say I wanted to give it a background color. And let's just say I wanted to make it, I don't know, orange. Right away I can see it's orange. And let's say I wanted to play around with the height and width. Let's say I wanted to make my width, I don't know, 100 and my height 50. Okay, looking all right. And let's say I wanted to center that text within here. So I'm going to do justify content, and that will center it vertically. And then align items, and that will center it horizontally. All right. Now, looking pretty good. Let's say I wanted to give it a border color. So if I wanted to give it a border color, and let's say I wanted that border color to be black, we're going to notice I don't see anything change here. And that's because I haven't done the border width yet. And let's do a border width of 1. Now I see it appear. So that's a common mistake that people often forget. If you don't set a border width, the default is 0 and you won't see anything. All right, let's say I wanted these edges to be a little rounded. So that would be my border radius. And looks good. I'm going to go just a little bit more. All right, liking how that looks. Now let's say we wanted to play around with our text. And let's say we change the font size. I don't know, make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Maybe we want to go a little bigger. I don't know. For that size, I might need to make my width a little bit bigger and play around with it. Again, you do you, however you want it to look. For right now, I'm happy with it. Okay. Now, you can see that when I click on this, I see the word pressed. I see the color changes to yellow, and everything is good. If I were to go in my index file and I were to add another MyButton, I'm going to see 2 buttons. And they're going to look identical. And that's because I have defined this component to look exactly like this. And while that's great and all over here because my code is like nice and compact, the downside to this is that it doesn't allow me any ability to customize it. Like this is literally a one and done button. That is all it does. And in some cases, if you're laying out maybe like a header file or a footer or a visual component that doesn't have any functionality, that might be okay. But I want this button to be reusable. I want to be able to have a set look for a button for my app, and I want to be able to change the text and change the functionality every time that I use it. And so to do that, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to customize this button to really do that. So the features that I want my button to be able to have, these are the things that I want to be able to have. I want to be able to pass in the title, which is going to be the text on the button, the on press, which is going to be its functionality. And then also I want to be able to have the option to pass in the background color and the text color, because I might want to specify and have it look differently on different pages. So let's say, for example, for my app, I have these are my default colors, but maybe I want to let somebody pass in the others, but I'm not requiring them to. However, things that I am requiring them to pass in are the title and the on press. Okay. Now, in order to do that, there are a couple things that I'm going to have to do to my code here. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that setup. Okay, so we're going to start out by just passing in the text that we're going to see on the button, and we will slowly pass in more and more properties for this component. So for starters, we're going to declare a data type, and we're going to say type props type equals, and then this is where you would list all of the values that you're going to be sending in as props, and this is basically where you say what type they are. So the first one I'm going to say is title, and this is of type string. And if I were having multiple properties, then I would list multiple ones after here. Now, in my functional component up here, because this is a functional component, we're actually going to declare it as a functional component. This isn't required right now, but later on it will be, so we may as well start getting in the habit of doing that now. So this is basically saying that my component is called MyButton. It is of type React functional component. And then inside the angled brackets, this is where I'm saying the data type of what props that this component is accepting. And it is expecting something of type props type, which I'm defining right here. And then inside the parentheses here, I am saying that I'm going to be accepting props. And so now what I can do is anywhere inside here that I want to refer to a value that was passed in as a props, I can say props dot and then title. If I had others, props dot and then other things. So right here, if I change this text and use curly braces and say props dot title, what's going to happen now is whatever I've passed in as the title is what I will see here on my button. Now, when I save this, you're going to notice that the text goes away. And that's because in my calling function, I am not sending that prop anywhere. And now it's expecting it. So you'll see here this error message is saying, hey, hold on, you are supposed to be sending in a title. So I'm going to say title equals hi. And then here I'll say title equals bye. And now you'll notice that these buttons look different. They have different text on them. So we can further